Hello and welcome. I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, and thanks for joining us. I want to welcome you to this show where we share some wisdom and some wit and some wonderful experts to help women navigate career and life changes and challenges, and most importantly, for you to know that you're not alone. Each week through our conversations, we share resources to encourage women to be more confident, resilient, and brave in their choices. We stream live weekly every Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific time on the E360 TV network, which you can find on your favorite streaming platforms like Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And we go live simultaneously on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook as well, where you can interact with us. And if you prefer to listen on the go, we are on all the podcast channels as well. So if something inspires you today and you want more, please subscribe to your favorite channel and leave us a comment and share your favorite episodes so we can create more ripples around the world. So what is holding you back from career and the life you deserve? It's a question I often ask my clients, and it's not always an easy one to answer. So today we're going to move beyond the confines of the ordinary into a realm where limits are merely illusions. I'm joined by a truly remarkable guest, Dr. Esther Zeledon, whose life story reads like an epic saga of resilience, transformation, and unwavering determination. From her roots as a Latina immigrant, to her stint as a diplomat, to her groundbreaking work as a life coach, speaker, and author, Dr. Esther embodies the spirit of a woman who refuses to be defined by boundaries. In a world that often tells us to conform, to fit in, and to dampen our dreams, Esther stands as a beacon of hope, showing us that the path to purpose is paved with the bricks of our unique stories and our unique struggles. She's here to share the essence of creating a limitless life. Doesn't that sound great? One where finding one's purpose isn't just a wishful thought, but a tangible reality we can all achieve and, in fact, enjoy. And if you've ever felt trapped by expectations, maybe stifled by societal pressures, or uncertain of what's calling you, you're meant to be here. Dr. Zeledon will guide us through unraveling these challenges, offering insights and strategies to not just dream of a limitless life, but to manifest it actively. So let's dig into that. Welcome, Dr. Esther. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
It's our pleasure. And you're coming to us from
Santo Domingo. From Santo Domingo. Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, thank you for coming all this way virtually. So many of our viewers are on a path of their own, a journey of self-discovery and finding their purpose. And many of my clients crave ways to find harmony and balance between their careers and their lives. So I'd love to start off by asking you to share a pivotal moment that led you to realize your purpose and how that inspired your book, Creating Your Limitless Life. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So my pivotal moment happened a few years ago when I was sitting as a diplomat in a director role. I had made all this impact. We had made as a team our 5-year vision come true, because when I joined in, the office was closing. It didn't have much funding. And I built this team, and we built it on shared mission and vision. And we went from, having 700,000 to having $100 million. And in the humanitarian world, That's a lot of money. Maybe not so much in corporate, but it is in the humanitarian world. And I was sitting there thinking that there was a little voice inside my head that kept on saying there's more and there's different. And this was something that was inside of me that I was like, I need to listen to it and do something about it. But I was overwhelmed by fear because I only had less than 10 years left to have a pension. I didn't have that many years left to retire, to go do something different. No one really leaves that job. A lot of people want that job. But there was something in me that said, this is not in full alignment with me. And I was already starting to feel sick and tired and fatigued. And I couldn't understand really why and all that was coming from. But I need to give you some backstory to really understand that though. So like as a child though, I had so I'm gonna go back actually to when I was like 2 years old. When I was 2 years old, I was under two. I almost died. And I basically was given 3 weeks to live, and my dad decided to play the lotto, and they won. And so they used that money to save my life. Now, because of that incident, then we went back to, I'm from Nicaragua. We went back to the country, and then we immigrated to the United States. But given that we immigrated during Civil War, we immigrated with no money, no anything. So when we went with just the stuff that we had, I grew up feeling that if I wasn't sick, if I hadn't been a burden, my parents would have had that money to do other things and not have been struggling paycheck to paycheck.
Mm.
So I grew up, that's why I said we have to go back because this is all rooted, right, into things that we grew up with, right? So I grew up being a people pleaser, perfectionist, and overthinker, right? And my purpose, I had defined it as only about giving financial stability to my family. It wasn't about me. I didn't think I deserved it. And so when we go and think about my trajectory, right, I became that perfect kid, perfect student, high achiever, right? And I didn't want to be a burden to anyone. So I continued on that journey. And then I did. I got into the best schools, right? I did all the check marks. But along the way, I could feel myself, the voice telling me not to follow the status quo at all times. Like, and I did little things. Like, first thing I was like, I don't want to be a doctor. I'm going to be environmental scientist. And then there was other little things like, I got married because of the check marks, right? Like when I finished my PhD, I felt super empty. And you're supposed to feel I was sold. Well, when you finish your education, that's the goal. That's your purpose. And when I finished it, I felt very empty. Like I helped my dad finish at the same time. And I was like, I thought I was supposed to feel amazing. And I don't. So then I thought, oh, well, there's the other check mark. I haven't been married by 30. So then I get married. And then at that time, I also was asking the wrong questions. Like he asked me, oh, what is your life purpose? And I said, oh, to have a six-figure job to help my family. That wasn't my purpose. But that's what I thought it was. I was confusing it with metrics. And so, of course, when we're in the marriage, we hit this strong point because I was like, once I had that job, I wanted to travel. I wanted to do other things. I wanted to do global movement. And he is like, but you told me you just wanted a six-figure job, right? I wasn't even sure who I was and what I wanted.
Yeah.
And because I was so busy on following, that's why I have Chasing the American Dream on the book, because I was so busy following the metrics on what I thought was my purpose. And the things that they don't tell you is that by following those metrics, you put this enormous pressure on yourself to be that, right? To be everything for everyone and be perfect and achievement and what everyone sees. That I was also suffering in silence. I was battling depression and anxiety. In my teens, I tried to take my life and I didn't tell anyone. And as an adult, I battled with it because I was being driven by external validation rather than what was inside. And so as I went along that trajectory, all the check marks, right? My final one was to have a title, right? To be going up in the organization. I was one of the few, it was 1.8% Latinas. I was a woman at the table, Latina at the table. I had brought all this impact. And then I still felt this emptiness inside. And that is when I decided there's something not right, because I have been helping everyone else figure out their purpose, whether in humanitarian aid, whether people, organizations, communities, countries, but I hadn't given myself permission to, which I did right in my childhood. So at that moment, it was getting like a pivotal moment in the sense of I had to decide whether I was going to go to another assignment for 4 years and do this again, and I was working crazy hours and I was feeling health, effects in my body. And at the same time, I started talking about it to actually my hairdresser, who ended up being my best friend, because I felt like I could be vulnerable with her because it didn't risk my professional reputation. And I started to be like, hey, I have this ideas. I have this voice in my head that tells me I want to do a global movement. I want to be entrepreneur. I want to try something different. And she was like, you should go for it. And we started sharing each other's dreams and aspirations with each other. And then one day she tells me I'm having all these headaches. I'm getting all these migraines. I help her fundraise for her surgery. And then she goes in for her surgery. And I thought I'm going to see her 2 days later. And she doesn't make it. And we're like around the same age.
Mm.
And that for me was the wake up call, because I go to her funeral. And at her funeral, I'm listening to everybody, and everybody's talking about their life and how death is coming. Where for all of us, but they're not talking about her legacy, her dreams, her aspirations, her fire, her whole purpose of being. And no one was talking about it, and that's when I realized this is a problem, right? Like they don't know her because she didn't share it with the world, and I have to change this. And so I decided that's it. Life is short. I went home. I told my dad I want to leave my job, and he goes to me, "Oh my God, you're crazy! No way! You can't do that. You have to think about your kids." And I was like, This is what I want to do." And he's like, "I don't understand. You've helped thousands of people." And I was like, "This is not my legacy." And it was the first time like I yelled at him, "This is not my legacy. I meant for bigger. I meant for something else, and I'm going to give myself permission to explore it." And nobody understood it. There was a lot of noise around me that was like, don't do it. But there was a voice in me that I was like, I need to follow and do. And that's when I decided to take that plunge, and I took that leap. And I had a huge learning curve because I knew nothing about social media. I knew nothing about entrepreneurship. I don't have an MBA. And I just said, I know nothing about it, but what I do know is that I know how to learn, and I could learn it.
Mm.
The minute I took that first step, I already felt in alignment, right? It's not a destination. The minute you start living who you're meant to be you're meant to live and bringing out your purpose every day, you're already there. Everything else is those metrics, those other things. Yes, of course I have 5, 10, 20-year goals, but they're more about how I want to feel and impact, right? Not so much about the metrics anymore. And so every day
Wow.
is in alignment and purpose.
I love that well, lots to unpack there. Thank you for sharing that story, and thank you for going back to how we are all influenced by what happens to us as young children, young adults, and we're going to get to that in just a second. But I love that you just said the moment you start living it, right? Taking the leap, and it's rarely perfect to start with. I can attest to that as well. But when you start doing what you are meant to do, what you love to do, what resonates with you, what makes you feel like you are grounded and in alignment, as you say, with what it is you are supposed to do, that's what it's all about. And then you're going to figure it out from there. Like you said, you can learn it along the way. I love that. Such a great story. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's a compelling story. Now, in your book, I said I was going to get to this in a second. In your book, you talk about dismantling limiting beliefs. I talk about this a lot with my clients as well. But dismantling limiting beliefs and getting curious about societal pressures and their effect on us. So, what advice do you have for someone who feels trapped, perhaps, by living by someone else's expectations of us? or maybe about that American dream?
Yeah. It's really easy to get stuck in that because if you start noticing, I do a lot of keynotes on this type of topic because in our society, think about all the phrases we grew up with, right? That's a silly dream. Don't stay grounded. Don't make illusions. Work hard. Don't make waves. Right. And it's across cultures. Like it's very prevalent in the Latino culture to have these type of phrases you're growing up. Every time you bring an idea, someone shoots it down. So of course they're already part of your own mental models. So of course it's really hard to then be able to say, okay, these are all limiting beliefs, and I'm just going to stop believing them because everyone has been telling that all around you. But one thing to remember, though, is that when you're trailblazing, and what I mean by trailblazing, when you're the first, right? It could be the first in your circle to do something different, right? It's not just, drastic, like the first to invent cancer, but you could be the first in your circle to get divorced. You could be the first in your circle that wants to leave their job to do something entrepreneur, right? Being the first, that means that no one around you has done it yet. So of course, people, when you bring up this idea and that, right, their natural thing is to project their own fears on you.
Right.
So I think the first step is the awareness of realizing that all those naysayers around you, it's the projection of their own fears and also their own mental models that they haven't seen it themselves. And it's not necessarily always in a bad intention. But then it's the second step to realize to have that other voice that's inside of you that knows what's in alignment with you, right? If you have that calling, you understand your unique value. You know how you want to show up. In my book, we can even do an exercise here, but I have this exercise that shows you what is your unique value add to the world. Once you understand that and where you need to belong, right? That's has to be your North Star, right? Not these other fixed things. And the American dream, it started off originally as a very open definition, right? Originally it was the definition of opportunity, of limitless opportunities. And then as society, we began to give it fixed metrics like the house, the marriage, the kids, the things you have to do by certain age. But we made those constructions, right? The original definition was opportunity. So it's
Mm.
also to think about that the American dream is how it's been sold right now in society is more about marketing, and it's the same dream for everyone, but we are not the same. And so it's becoming to that awareness that we are not all the same, we are not all clones. So that same dream cannot bring happiness to all of us. And it's okay to want different things, and it's okay not to want those things, right? That's just one mental model that's been sold, and it's very limiting, right? It tells us we can only get to half the mountain by 40, but we still have the rest of our lives to live and so many other things to do and impact. And none of those metrics are about impact, about feeling. And I have this exercise, my workbook and book, that's about your legacy, your obituary. Because when you actually write your obituary and you rewrite it on what you wanted to say, it does not include any metrics, right? And I do that intentionally first to give that awareness to folks that when you actually, like at the end of your life, when you look back on it, what people are talking about and celebrating about you is not those American dream networks. It's about the impact you made and how you made people feel. And so once you get that awareness that it's more, your legacy is about the impact you make, right? It's not the American dream at all. They're totally different. And
Yeah.
it is coming into that awareness. So I think the first step is awareness.
Yeah.
And the second one's unpacking what is the uniqueness that I bring and that what is it that I want for my life.
Right. Right. You're so right. It's such a good reminder for us that um, we are each unique individuals, and we have our own set of desires and aspirations. And if we let other people tell us that it's right or wrong, we're doing ourselves a disservice, and we're doing our dream a disservice. And I love the way you put it. we let the naysayers around us, who are likely responding negatively to what it is we want to do because of what they feel about their fears, right? And they may do it out of love for us, right? They are concerned for us. They don't want us to fail, but that holds us back. And if we allow that, the expectations of others to hold us back, then it's impossible to live our purpose and to pursue it.
Exactly.
Yeah. I love the practicality of your approach in your book of discovering and living one's purpose. Great activities and exercises, and in the workbook as well that accompanies your book. So could you outline a few steps for us? I know you gave us one little tidbit already, but outline a few steps from your book that someone can start with today to align more closely with their purpose.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wanted to also talk about, before I go into the steps, is that the reason I wrote it is because as a kid, when I would read books, one, I saw they were mainly written by men. And second, that a lot of the books were written about purpose. They would just state, find your purpose, find your drive, but never talked about the how. And the closest I ever got into the how was the Japanese model, right, which has the four intersections. But even when I did the Japanese approach, I still was felt incomplete. So a lot of what I share, there's 8 parts of purpose, which expands on the Japanese model, was part of my own research and helping folks, and helping and also applying it to communities, countries, and everyone. That is what I saw. You need to have the complete picture. So for example, one of the activities I go through is putting people in a scenario, because when you ask them, when you ask people, what is your value? They don't know how to answer. What is your unique way of solving problems? People feel frozen. So I've translated that into questions. So we could do one on the spot. So if you had unlimited resources, what global problem would you solve?
Oh dear. If I had unlimited resources,
First one that comes to mind.
the first one that comes to mind is hungry children.
Okay. Hungry children. So now the G7's like, that's great. I agree with you. I'm going to give you the money. How would you solve it? And if you don't know how would you figure out the how?
Yeah, so I don't know how, but I certainly would convene a team of people who are smarter than I am and have been working this problem in their own ways, and give them, you know, amplify the resources that they have, so that we can get to the solution faster.
Now, when you think about your personal life, or when someone has come to you with a question, do you use the same approach? Do you go searching for experts and people?
Yeah. So
Okay.
now you're
Okay.
talking to you're talking to a coach now,
Yeah.
who has learned the hard way that doing it alone is it's a lot harder and it takes a lot longer. So I have my own personal board of directors for my life and my business, and that's one of the things I teach. So yes, I would convene my board of directors for
Yeah.
any problem to solve. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's how you show up every day to the world, right? And
Yeah.
that's one part of your purpose, right? That's one part of how you approach problem solving, how you help your friends, how you show up in the business space, in the coaching space, and every space you go to. So no one answers that how the same. Everyone brings
Right.
in different steps, different order, even if they have the same categories, how they order it is differently.
Yep.
So it's not so much the global problem, but it's how you like to bring it. And as human beings, we like to fix, we like to, brainstorm and solution solve. So that's the first step, is realizing that, one, you have a way that you show up to the world and how you solve problems that's unique to you. And that applies to everything in your life, right? It's not about the job you're in or the title. And it's realizing that you could take that approach and apply it to any sector, anything. And if we had to start over as a country, that's the skill you would bring in, right? That's the
Right.
way you would come in. So that's one of the questions for people. It's like, I think they don't even realize the process that they take every day. And that's how people want to approach them. So when you have a circle of friends, and you think about who you go to for advice or help, you go to different people for different things, and
Yep.
why, right? And so one of the exercises is that, and then the part two of it is, I tell people, ground truth it, right? I'm a scientist. So I'm like, ground truth that for yourself. Text 5 friends and ask them throughout different parts of your life that don't know each other, how you've impacted them and how. And you're going to see that a lot of that's going to come up, right? It's going to be like whether it's you helped me solution solve, you helped me connect to different resources and people, right? Everyone's going to
Right.
write to you the same. And then it's also coming to a realization you've been that same person since you were a child. So one is this connecting, because when people feel stuck in that American dreams because they're connecting all their value to what title and job they're in right now. And it's through these questions to realize you've always had that value, and it's more than your technical expertise. Your technical expertise, of
Yeah.
course, is a highlight, right? It's great. It comes to service many times in your life, but there's something bigger that you bring that you can apply. That means that you can pivot to anything. So that's one of the questions. Another question I have there, I mean, again, there's 8 parts and each of them have tons of sub questions. That's why the workbook goes every part with you. There's another question I have that I ask people, is their childhood dream. So when people think about their childhood dream, a lot of my clients come to me and they say, "Oh, well, I wanted to be a doctor, but I never did it," or "I wanted to be a nurse and it didn't happen," or "I wanted to be a lawyer and it wasn't at all what I thought it was being." But again, this is part of the mental models. When we're kids, we look up to someone, right? If it's a dream, maybe something we watched on TV, maybe someone we admire, but we associate it with the job, right? And instead of the characteristics. So in this exercise, I go to, what is your childhood dream? Who was it? What was it? And now let's dissect that. Let's take it away from the career, the title, and tell me the characteristics of that person. So like in my example, mine was Walt Disney. I had a meteorologist I wanted to be, and a UN ambassador, right? And I did confuse the UN ambassador because that's why I went into the diplomacy field. But the characteristics were, these were people who spoke, who started global movements, who helped people through crises, who were visionary and positive, right? These were the characteristics. And when you think about those characteristics, most of the time you embody a lot of them. And really the question there is, what do you want to embody more of that you can't right now in the situation you're in? What is it in those characteristics that you feel that you can't bring out, and that's what's leading to your feeling stifled or stagnant or even limited. All right, so part of that exercise is moving that person away from that title, what they associate with, and more of these characteristics. And some people get stuck on the childhood dream part because they're like, I don't remember my childhood, and that's probably associated with maybe something that happened. But you can also think about, who do you admire today, and what are those
Right.
characteristics,
Right.
and how can I embody more of that, right? So when you put these all together, right, and there's more, there's like what you can teach the world, what you love, and your legacy. And your legacy is always moving, right? Because that's the thing that you want at the end of your life. But the rest of it is stagnant because it's who you are, right? It's not stagnant, it's static, sorry. Stays with who you are. So another part of it that I saw missing in other types of models of purpose was, none of them talk about the other side of purpose, which is what you've overcome and how. Right, everything
Mm.
is about what you love, what you want to be, and then these things about your unique value. but no one puts in the overcoming and how. And why that's important is because they're linked. So in my case, right, my purpose is to help people identify and discover their purpose and live it. Okay. But that brings another vulnerability to me, which means that I stay in things too long, and I'm a people pleaser to the ultimate degree and all those things because I want to see people live their purpose. But then that also puts me in that weakness, right? Of being in things and helping people that don't necessarily want to be helped. So I have to be aware of that, right? Of the other side of it and what that brings and what has helped me and how. Because I need to be able to integrate rather than just using resilience. That's why resilience is a huge part of it. Only when I hit crisis point, I need to integrate that into my day to day and have those filters that I am bringing in my purpose into the places that are in alignment with me and making sure that I understand the red flags that it brings. And then with that complete, then comes, okay, this is how I live in alignment. Because if I were just to do the other part, then I put myself in those situations, which it was in the past. And that's how some people also silence their purpose because they're like, I've been burned before. I don't want to be empathetic anymore. I don't want to help. But they haven't done through that analysis. Wait, what is the filter? What have you overcome? Why? How have you gone in those situations? And how do we filter that so you can bring this out to the world every day without hurting yourself?
Yeah, because when you think about when you become aware of not only what you've overcome, but how you've overcome it, those are skills, right? The tools in your treasure chest, as I like to say, that you can draw from that will help you in a similar situation when it happens again. So and therein lies the essence of resilience, right? And I like to say it's not bouncing back, but it's bouncing forward, right? So when we utilize those tools that we've learned from the adversity that we have overcome in our
Yeah,
lives.
absolutely. And I put in there that it's even I like to integrate it into your everyday, right? So I have in a workbook a calendar, right? The things that helped you, put it in your everyday. Don't just wait till crisis point to bring it
Right,
out of your treasure chest.
right,
Use them every single day. Like I wake up every day and read my testimonials. That's always what's helped me is to understand how I've impacted people. Instead of waiting till I
yeah,
feel like any type of anxiety, it's just part of my daily routine.
yeah,
And that's why for me, self care is not a cookie cutter thing, right? It's what has helped you is part of your self care every single day so that you could show up how you want to show up, but
right.
without ever doubting who you are and that it's not a gift.
Yep, yep. Love that. Love that. So tell us a little more about your journey here. Your journey to living a limitless life. How has that affected your closest relationships?
Yeah, at first it was tough because at first not everyone understands what you're doing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But that's also, I think, the curse, one of the curses of being a trailblazer, being the first in things. At first, you're going to be alone. And because no one really is going to understand around you, but you have to be proactive. So I think what helped me, again, that's very individual, was creating a new circle, right? So it doesn't mean that
mm,
I'm letting go of my old circle, but it's also creating new circles with people that were championing those types of ideas. So during when I made that decision to pivot, I knew I had to join an entrepreneur community, but I didn't know of any nearby, right? And that's part of the dismantling limiting beliefs. I was like, oh, I know there's no one nearby me, but that's not true. But I just wasn't ready, right, to see it around me. So I first went into the digital world and I found a community of women in Australia. I mean, that's one of the beauties of digital world right now. You can find communities on anything, anywhere in the world. And I found this community in Australia and they were amazing, super supportive, amazing human beings. And they're the ones who first gave me, no, this isn't a crazy idea. This is wonderful. There's people doing wonderful things and have wonderful ideas, and entrepreneur, and we supported each other while at the same time I was transitioning my people close to me. So first was the awareness that they are not going to support me right now, but doesn't mean that they're not going to support me later. So I took a lens of, rather than being angry at them, having empathy towards them.
Mm.
One, they still live in their mental models. It's really hard to get out of your mental models. And so I had empathy. That's all they've been heard. That's all they've heard. That's all they've known. So of course it's going to take them some time to transition. So it's having empathy. They're not there yet, and that's okay. I'm not going to push it anymore. And if they come around, I'll be ready. But at the same time, having a boundary of, don't call me with your fears, right? I'm doing this. Call me for support. Even if you don't know how to support me, just say, just ask about it if you want. But I'm not going to also tolerate, right, the negative energy. And I had to do that with the people closest around me. Be like, don't give me. I already have enough worries. I don't need the extra additional. And it's okay if you can't call me. You only could call me once a month when you feel positive about it. That's okay. I'm not going to take it. It's not going to be against you in any way. But it's just like that. So training new expectations, and then through action, them seeing. I think it took like a year for my old circle to come around. After a year, they saw, oh wow, actually look at her. It's working. It's happening. She's happier. I see her. She's glowing. And actually, I ended up motivating a lot of the people who at first were hesitant, started following, and they all started pivoting. And a lot of them then became my clients. So it ended up working out, but it took a transition time, and me also having that empathy towards them and giving them that space to come around when they were ready, and
Yeah,
having that boundary.
that you're right, and that's it. That's the most important thing I think you said was certainly understanding that they are coming from a place of love for you and they're concerned about you, but having the boundary to say to them, "This is the choice I'm making, and I would love your support, but if you can't support me, I'm just going to distance myself about this. We're not going to talk about this," right? That's a boundary so that you don't have to hear their negativity. And when it comes up, you go, this is what we're not going to talk about, right? I had that in my life too. When I made the switch from 30 years in corporate into an entrepreneurial venture of my own, it was, people thought I was absolutely nuts to give up all that I had worked so hard for and then realize that it wasn't really what I wanted anymore, right? I was really good at it, but it wasn't what I wanted anymore. And getting the support for that was hard in my closest circle at the time. So you said set boundaries and create new circles so that you surround yourself with the people who do support your dream, who do think that this is a good idea, who have resources to help you learn what you don't know. That's so, so important. I'm glad you said it
Absolutely.
was hard at first because it is hard.
Yeah, it's lonely, right? And that's why it's so
Wow.
important to find a circle.
Isolating.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you
Yeah.
know what? At the same time, though, I realized that I had been lonely always, because it was, even though during my success in my job, it's still being, once you go up the ladder, you're
Yeah.
alone because you can't show vulnerability, your fear of your professional reputation. The hardest part of writing my book was sharing my story, because I still
Yeah.
even
I want to
had
talk about
that.
that. Yeah.
Oh, I still had that ingrained in me as well. Like, I was
Yeah.
scared of sharing everything.
Yeah.
But
Because you said the word. I mean, you have to make yourself very vulnerable.
yeah,
And you delve deeply into personal stories and societal observations in your book. And I know when I wrote my book, it took me a while to get real to be able to share the reality of what happened to me and and be that vulnerable. So I'd love to hear from you. What do you think holds people back from sharing their stories? And how did you overcome the need to be vulnerable when you wrote your book?
Yeah, it was really hard, right? Because as the high achiever I was, that one of the hardest things is to be completely vulnerable because you fear that it shows weakness, and it was so hard to get to where you were or where you are that you fear it will diminish it somehow. So I think the two things is that I hear the most from aspiring authors is, and I experience myself, fear of professional risk of professional reputation, and two, fear of what family will say. And that was a big one for me,
Yeah,
especially coming from Latino family. You don't talk about personal things outside the house, right? You don't
right,
share that. You don't talk about money.
right.
You don't talk about struggle, and you can't trust anyone, right? That's the things, those were the limiting beliefs and narratives I grew up
Yeah.
with. So I was very anxious when I was writing the book. And actually, I had approached the publisher that I only wanted to write about discovering your purpose, all the formula and the workbook, share with the world. And that was it. And they were like, you have to share your story. And so that's what took me the longest, right? Which people find really
Yep.
surprising. No, the technical part was quick. I had that in my head. I knew it worked. I had, done all the trials, right? I knew it. I knew it. I knew this formula hands down, in and out. But my story was really hard. And then it's like the dance. Like, do you leave everything out? Do you keep everything in? And at the end, I realized I could not achieve full freedom unless everything was there.
Hmm.
But I spent many nights not sleeping. And I remember this crazy story. I think I even I added it in the book last minute. Was I spent 3 days thinking about this one thing that happened to me in the workplace. And I was scared to share it. And so I deleted it. But I was like, I'm deleting it in suggestion mode. I'm not going to add it in. And one of my coach friends, actually, he was like, he called me and I don't know where. And he's like, I want to ride with you to this event. He never does that. And I said, sure. Yeah, let's go. I was like, he must have something to talk about. And in the car, he tells me this whole situation. And it's exactly what I would delete it in the book.
Hmm.
And I told him what I was going to say and the book about it. And he told me, you need to keep that in because I thought I was alone. I thought no one could understand. And I knew you would understand. He's like, because I remember something you said one time. He's like, but I feel like no one shares this stuff. And it's important to feel seen and heard that you're not crazy. Because that's the problem. If we don't share these stories when we're going
Right.
through it, we only see the successes. We think the suffering or the bullying, because everyone's like, how can you experience bullying when you're on top? Oh, you experience bullying. Like, even, I coach a lot of executives that, everything's beautiful on paper and on the internet, and they still experience bullying or being like
Yeah.
restricted and hyper scrutinized. And when we don't share those things, then you think I'm doing something wrong because I'm experiencing it. I must not be as good. There must be something. And I remember even hearing those narratives when I would share these stories with people close to me. They're like, Esther, it's because you're fighting too much. It's because it's like it was always put that I was doing something.
Hmm.
But as I've shared my story out, I've gotten so much feedback from so many people that are like, I'm going through that same thing. I am doing that, but I've never shared it.
That's how we connect, right?
Yep.
And your experience writing your book was so similar to mine. I wrote the part of the technical aspects of what I wanted to share, right? The program, right? The steps to get where you need to be, that had worked for, I proven, right? And when I submitted that, this isn't what's this was the question. What's this? Where are the stories? Where's your story? Where are other people's stories? So I went, oh, other people's stories. Okay, so I latched onto that, and I wrote it backwards is what happened, right? Then I wrote other people's stories, and that felt that felt really good. And it kind of conditioned me a little bit to think about mine, but I wasn't ready for that. So I submitted that and then go, where's your story?
Same
And you're
process.
so right. It's a crazy process. You're so right. It's not until we share our stories and what is at the core of who we are, who we've become, and why we do what we do. That's our story. And if we don't share it, there's no connection then. No connection. I love that you
Exactly.
shared that. Yeah. So this is no small feat, this writing a book that's part memoir and part practical guidance for people, right?
It's really hard. And I see it now with clients. I'm helping them through their book journeys. It's the hardest part. They'll have everything written, but that last part. And so if anybody's through that, we see you, right? We hear you
Yeah,
because it's
we
the
hear you.
hardest part.
It is.
And and all of it is again our own limiting beliefs too, because nothing happened after I shared it. I don't know. I had so many fears of
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
was going to risk everything, and
Yeah.
that's not true
And
because
some of what
yeah,
I wrote, I had never told my family.
me too. Me too. Yeah,
So I understand what you mean by, sharing it. I was more concerned about how my family would react to it. And
exactly.
it was, at first, it was, I never knew. They were surprised. How come I never knew that? Why did you never share that? And then it was support. So
Exactly.
yeah, it's a scary time though. It's a really scary time. And what I realized too, and I'll ask you this question, um, after sharing my story, I was able to do it much more easily when I spoke in front of a crowd, when I speak all the time with my clients. Sharing my story lets them, in snippets and depending on what we're talking about, right? So that they don't feel alone. It's
We
easier once you do it.
exactly. Yeah, we connect through shared experiences and
Yeah,
connection.
yeah,
And it stops you from filtering things. But it's true, it's hard. And I remember my family too, they learned a lot about me. And I remember I left these two book signing events in Miami, where my family is, the last ones, because I said I have to first practice it with the rest of the world, and then I'm going to leave these two. And I was the most nervous on those two because I had to also say my story in front of them
yeah,
I never
yeah,
shared before. But after that, it's complete liberation,
yeah.
and
It
that's
is.
and a lot of the exercises where I do in speaking roles is having people practice asking people about their stories and aspirations, because we don't ask enough, right? We're always asking people about their next promotion, their next
Yeah,
job. Are you buying something? Your boyfriend, girlfriend, or husband, wife, whatever. But we never ask people, hey, is there something about your story you've never shared? Um, what's your highest aspiration? Like changing those conversations to
right.
make it easier for us to connect in a real, authentic way, not
Yeah,
just showing
yeah,
accolades and
yeah,
metrics, but actually sharing
yeah,
uh, realities.
yeah. Something we've never told before, something we're afraid of, something
Exactly.
that happened we might be a little ashamed of. Those are the kinds of things that when we release them, right, they don't hold any power over us anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. That's so, this is a, Esther, I'm so happy to have you here today. We could talk about this forever because you and I are kindred spirits where this is concerned. But I would love to have you help me wrap this up in a bow because we're running out of time. Would you share with us, maybe some key takeaways from what you've shared today, so that our our viewers can walk away with some real tips.
Yeah. So I think to wrap it away, I'm hoping from the story and the exercises we've shared today that any pivot you want to do, any dream you've had, it's within your reach, right? All limitations exist in your mind. Like, you know how to learn, you know how to achieve, you know how to do great things. And it's time to give yourself permission to find that alignment and that joy. And it's not risky, it's not selfish, and it's something that you should and can do. And so I'm hoping through this talk you can get that inspiration to do that. So whether it's to write a book, maybe you want to do something different, maybe you don't want to own a house and you want to live abroad like I do part-time, and do anything you want, any type of life structure. You know, life is short, life is fragile. So take that time to find that alignment and do it. All the exercises are in your workbook. Like, I created it in such a way that it's almost like a journal, and you do these exercises and it goes step by step with you, because I think so many of us journaled as when we were children but forgot how to do it as an adult and stare at blank pages. Well, this has the prompts for you. Take that time to get to know yourself, right? We spend so much time giving to others, and rarely do we take that time to put some time into ourselves and getting to know who we are and who we want to be. And that will have that ripple effect, which you mentioned earlier in the beginning of this show. That ripple effect, right? If you're in alignment, then you can help other people find that alignment, and all that ripple effect of positivity, right? It will go
Yeah.
around and go so much further, and you're showing up in your most authentic and best way. So that's my
Yeah,
wrap up.
and we get to become role models,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. I love that you wrote this book and the accompanying workbook. So everyone, please, just the link is in the show notes. So go take a look at Dr. Esther's book and workbook. So Esther, what's the one best way people can get in touch with you and see what else you're all about?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram, b.act.change, or I'm also on LinkedIn, just Dr. Esther Zeledon or Zeledon, however you want to pronounce it. I'm there both. I'm very responsive. I'll respond to you within a week. And if you need a champion, you feel stuck, you just want inspiration, that's where you can find it.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your brilliance and your book and your story. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, everyone.
My pleasure. And for those watching and listening, I appreciate that you're a part of this community. So if you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, leave a comment, pick a star, uh, share it with the people that you think will benefit from hearing this message and this resource. Creating and sharing resources for women is one of my favorite things to do. And another favorite thing is being a career and life coach for women navigating challenging times and helping them get unstuck, explore new possibilities, and find harmony in their careers and lives. So, again, if something resonates with you and you'd like a fresh perspective, let's talk. The links to connect with Dr. Esther and I are in the show notes below, as I said before. And now let's meet again here next Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific time for another inspiring conversation. Because you know what? I believe it's our time to thrive. So let's thrive together. Till next time, I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, helping you turn transition into triumph.